Hello and welcome everyone. Hope you liked the previous video on stakeholder engagement. So let us see more examples of stakeholder engagement. So I'm going to start with the first example on stakeholder engagement stories. So this is based on a systematic review on stakeholder experiences of the diagnosis of Lyme disease. The review conducted by Department of Health Reviews Facilities, and the reviewers were from Epicenter, University College London, London School of Hygiene and Tropical Medicine, and Center for Reviews and Dissemination, University of York. So let us look at the review questions. So this review topic was on stakeholder experiences of the diagnosis of Lyme disease, and the review questions were: what are patients, clinicians and researchers' perspectives and experiences of diagnosis of Lyme disease? How do these perspectives and experiences help us to understand and implement findings about the accuracy of different diagnostic approaches? So, what type of studies were included in this systematic review? 3 types of studies. There were diagnostic test accuracy studies, and they extracted researchers' comments about barriers and facilitators to the use of diagnostic test in the rationale for their study. Studies that reported the views, experiences or behaviors of clinicians with respect to Lyme disease diagnosis. And the third type was studies that reported the views and experiences of patients with regard to Lyme disease diagnosis. So in this review, they synthesize each type of study separately, and they explored the different stakeholders' perspectives on Lyme disease diagnosis. And the findings of each synthesis were then pulled together to examine cross-cutting themes. So the review was about stakeholder experiences, and then they included 3 types of studies and then synthesized separately. So let us now, our topic of interest is to look closely at the stakeholders involved in this particular study. So let us see who are the stakeholders consulted in this review. So the main 2 types of stakeholders were patient advocacy groups and scientific advisory group. So in this review, the reviewers included 8 UK-based patient advocacy groups and also a scientific advisory group of academics and clinicians with expertise in Lyme disease. So what was the purpose of stakeholder consultation in this review? So why they involved stakeholders? The review was about stakeholders' experience, but they also involved the stakeholders locally. So why they involved the stakeholders? So the main purpose was to understand how the findings from international studies of patient views and clinician experiences resonated with UK experiences. So for that, consultation meetings were conducted and shared the findings with 8 UK patient advocacy groups. So when you conduct a review, and we get more studies from the international studies and not much from the local context, we can involve the relevant stakeholders to get the local perspectives. So participants included, I'm now talking about the stakeholder consultation group, included both patients and clinicians. And findings from consultation from UK stakeholders were distilled into themes which were compared to findings arising from international studies of patients' views and clinician experiences. So throughout this systematic review, they have synthesized the findings thematically. So along with synthesizing findings from the international studies, they also synthesize findings from the stakeholders consultation. So findings were shared with all stakeholders who attended consultations to ensure accuracy. So what was the role of scientific advisory group? So earlier we saw there were 2 types of stakeholders involved: patient advocacy group and scientific advisory group. So let us see what was the role of scientific advisory group. This group comprised of UK and national academics who have published on a range of issues relating to Lyme disease. as well as representatives from Public Health England. So they were mainly academics and policymakers. So the the advisory group were expected to provide advice on technical issues relating to the research questions, concepts and definitions, as well as strategies for dissemination and impact. So their main contribution was to advise on a cutoff date for searching. So they were experts locally and also policymakers and decision makers. So they were involved in the systematic review process. So how the stakeholder consultation was done? There are a lot of details in this slide, and you can also see the report, the more details in the report. So basically they have followed the steps of a qualitative research. So the stakeholder consultation was done by following the steps of a qualitative research. So there were series of face-to-face or telephone consultation with 8 UK-based patient advocacy groups. And then through this consultation, the review team sought to understand whether the initial draft findings resonated with UK patient experiences. So that was the main purpose, whether the findings from international studies resonate with the resonate with the UK patient experiences and the practitioner's experience. So participants were provided with information about the purpose and methods of the consultation. So we need to plan the stakeholder consultation. We need to have the purpose, and we have to also structure the methods and so on. So they were informed that individuals would not be named, but the groups would be acknowledged if in the report if they agree. So confidentiality and anonymity was maintained, and also the consent was obtained from all the stakeholder participants. Consultations were scheduled to last approximately 90 minutes, although some were shorter and some longer than this. So the whole process is structured. The whole stakeholder consultation is structured and conducted. The sessions involved a presentation of themes arising from initial analysis from patient and clinician studies, and participants were asked them to comment on whether or not these findings resonated with their experiences. So they had more than one stakeholder consultation. So in the initial consultation, they discussed the initial findings from the systematic review to see that whether the findings are congruent with the patient's experiences, experiences in the UK stakeholders. So participants were also asked to identify any areas or themes that they felt were missing from the analysis. The sessions were recorded, and also meticulous documentation process was taken place for the sessions. So following the completion of analysis, the key review findings were shared with the patient stakeholder group. So this is the second time also the stakeholders were consultation to finalize the themes. So the findings were presented as a series of bullet points via an online survey, and stakeholder groups were invited to comment. So we requested that each group provide a single collated response for their group, and the collated response for each group were then assessed to check whether the key findings resonated or not. So as I mentioned before, like how the international studies were synthesized according to the themes, stakeholder consultations were also synthesized according to the various themes. How involving stakeholders benefit in this review? Feedback from UK patient advocacy group indicated that the review findings largely resonated with their experience. So they were in agreement with the main thematic findings. Patient advocacy groups noted a need for more evidence from the UK context. So we know that it is important, though the themes were similar or congruent, but we need more details or more nuances should be considered from the local context. So I'm continuing with how involving stakeholders benefit in this review. So both advocacy group feedback on these findings from both the face-to-face consultation and the online survey is mentioned in the report in detail. For many of the stakeholders who attended the face-to-face consultation, the overall findings from the research on patient views were felt to resemble their own experiences. Some stakeholders explicitly noted that the themes from the research covered many key issues. For example, there is a lot of it covered there. That means it is mostly similar, but they also express some of the that their own unique difficulties and experiences. So given the lack of research from the UK, the similarity of the research finding with the UK experience was unexpected for one stakeholder. They were also surprised how the international findings exactly resonated with the UK experience. It's highlighted all of the main problems. In addition, the stakeholder feedback also indicated that the 5 main themes from the patient views research were appropriate. In many cases, they provided additional insights about these themes. So that was one of the main benefit. Though the themes were similar, they have provided additional insights. You can see all these details in the report. I have given the reference of that report in many of my slides. So overall, it benefited the review. It also helped to assess the validity of our findings with the relevance with the relevance to the local context, and also by involving multiple stakeholders and multiple type of study designs, a broader consideration of evidence, a broader perspective was obtained, and then that suits policymakers, clinicians, and the public to have a holistic understanding of the complex issues in Lyme disease diagnosis. Another advantage of involving stakeholders was they help in disseminating the findings. Often when we do systematic review, we manage to publish in academic journals, but then it is important to disseminate the findings to the public. So the stakeholder consultation was very useful to disseminate the findings in real time and create a relationship that helped us to explore how the future dissemination could be done. So there were also challenges because it was a sensitive topic and debated topic, and there was concern with reflecting the experience and perspectives of each stakeholder group as equally as possible in order to foster understanding of the issue. So the consultations were carried out in a very sensitive manner, and it was important to reflect everyone's response and everyone's opinion to take into consideration. So we hope that this approach has allowed a balanced and equitable synthesis of the different stakeholders' views as far as the literature allows. So overall, it was a very useful and fruitful experience. So in conclusion, there are several take-home messages from this example when we conduct a systematic review and plan to involve stakeholders. So we need to carefully determine who are the stakeholders and how the stakeholder consultation could be done and how it will benefit the review. And everything should be carefully planned, discussed, and there should be a structure to the stakeholder consultations, and we also need to document this process in the systematic review. So thank you very much for listening to this particular example of involving stakeholders. I will be coming with more videos with examples of stakeholder involvement, so we can understand how in different ways the stakeholders can be involved in systematic review. Please like, share, and subscribe, and thank you once again.